What would happen if our planet ran out of water? A thought that's probably never crossed your mind, right? Imagine a world without water, the life-giving liquid that we so often take for granted. Water is the very essence of life, indispensable and irreplaceable, playing a crucial role in our survival. It is not just about quenching our thirst, it is about the sustenance of life, from the food we eat to the air we breathe. However, an alarming fact is that only 3% of the world's water is actually consumable. Yes, you heard it right, only 3%. The rest of it is locked away in oceans, too salty for human consumption or to irrigate our crops. This minuscule percentage is distributed unevenly across the globe, leading to a disparity in water access. Some regions enjoy a surplus while others are parched, their wells running dry. The scarcity of water affects every aspect of life in these areas, from agriculture to health, from economy to social stability. Now, consider what would happen if this 3% were to run out. Imagine a world where the rivers run dry, the wells are empty, and the taps yield nothing. Life as we know it would come to a grinding halt. Crops would wither and die, livestock would perish, and eventually, so would we. Without water, there would be no agriculture, no industry, no cities. Economies would collapse, societies would fall into chaos, and the world as we know it would cease to exist. It would be an apocalypse, a water apocalypse. It's a grim picture, isn't it? But this is not a dystopian novel or a sci-fi movie plot. This is a potential reality if we continue to exploit our precious water resources irresponsibly. So the question isn't as absurd as it initially seems, is it? The water apocalypse is a possibility, a chilling thought that should make us all pause and reflect on our relationship with this invaluable resource. It's high time we start thinking seriously about water conservation before the taps run dry for good. Or while the planet running out of water seems like a far-fetched dystopia, let's delve into the current state of our global water supply. The world is awash with water, but not all of it is accessible or suitable for use. In fact, only about 3% of our planet's water is fresh. And of that small percentage, just a fraction is available for human consumption. The rest is locked away in glaciers, ice caps, soil, or the atmosphere. Now consider this, our world's population is growing exponentially. We've crossed the 7 billion mark and are heading towards the 8 billion mark. Every single one of these individuals needs water to survive, not just for drinking, but for cooking, cleaning, and a myriad of other daily activities. This ever-growing demand is putting immense pressure on our already strained water resources. But that's not all. Climate change is altering the global water cycle, causing drastic shifts in rainfall patterns. Some regions are experiencing increased rainfall, leading to flooding. Others are facing extended periods of drought. These changes are further exacerbating the water crisis, making the distribution of this vital resource even more unequal. Water scarcity is already a reality in many parts of the world. In some regions, people have to walk miles every day just to fetch a bucket of water. In others, escalating tensions over water rights are sowing the seeds for potential conflicts. On top of that, our water resources are being polluted at an alarming rate. Industrial waste, agricultural runoff, and untreated sewage are contaminating our rivers, lakes, and underground aquifers, making the water unsafe for use. So, while it might seem like we have an abundance of water, the reality is quite different. Our water resources are under severe strain. They're being depleted faster than they can be replenished, and they're being polluted beyond safe levels. The situation is dire, and it's only going to get worse unless we take drastic measures to conserve and protect our water resources. So, the dystopia isn't as far-fetched as it seems, is it? Water, an element so crucial to life, has already been a cause for war in the past. More than 4,000 years ago, the fertile lands of Mesopotamia were a battleground, not for gold, not for land, but for a resource we often take for granted: water. The Tigris and Euphrates rivers were lifeblood for the ancient civilizations that thrived there. and control over these waterways often led to conflict. This was the last recorded war over water. But as we look to the future, we can't help but wonder, could history repeat itself? As our global water supply dwindles, the potential for conflicts over this precious resource grows. Just imagine, regions with abundant water become fortresses coveted by those less fortunate. Countries with access to fresh water could wield it as a weapon, controlling its distribution to gain political or economic leverage. The struggle for water could lead to tension between nations, communities, even neighbors. In places where water is scarce, the fight for survival could become literal. Picture a world where water is more valuable than gold, where a glass of clean water is a luxury only the privileged can afford. And it's not just about drinking water. Agriculture, industry, energy production, they all rely heavily on this resource. A shortage could disrupt these sectors, leading to economic instability and social unrest. But it's not just a hypothetical scenario. Around the world, disputes over water are already happening. From the arid regions of the Middle East to the melting glaciers of the Himalayas, water scarcity is becoming a flashpoint for tension and conflict. So as we look ahead, we must recognize the potential for water to become a source of conflict, just as it was in ancient Mesopotamia. But we must also remember that water is a human right, not a privilege. And as such, it's our responsibility to ensure it's available for all, not just the few. History has shown that scarcity of resources can lead to conflict, and water is no different. Water, a human right, is slowly turning into a luxury resource. A statement that might seem absurd, but it's becoming our reality. Water, the lifeblood of our planet, is under threat. Despite being a fundamental human right, recognized by the United Nations, it is becoming increasingly scarce and costly. This vital resource, which we often take for granted, is being commodified and commercialized. In many parts of the world, water scarcity is a growing issue. Climate change, population growth, and pollution are all contributing factors to this crisis. Limited access to clean water is not just an inconvenience, it's a matter of life and death. In water-stressed regions, people are often forced to rely on expensive bottled water or risk consuming contaminated water from unreliable sources. The irony is that those who can least afford it end up paying the most for their water. Let's put this into perspective. Imagine having to choose between buying food or water for your family. That's the harsh reality for many people across the globe. This is not just a problem for the developing world. Even in wealthier nations, the cost of water is rising. Aging infrastructure, increasing demand, and dwindling supply are driving up prices. The cost of water in some parts of the United States, for instance, has increased by more than 30% in the past decade alone. This trend of water becoming a luxury resource has serious implications. It exacerbates inequalities, threatens public health, and can lead to social unrest. It's a ticking time bomb that we need to address before it's too late. The right to water is a fundamental human right. It's not just about quenching our thirst or hygiene, it's about dignity. Everyone, regardless of their socioeconomic status, should have access to safe, clean, and affordable water. And so, we must reiterate, access to clean water should be a right, not a luxury. This is a call to action for governments, businesses, and each one of us to recognize the value of water and to ensure its sustainable and equitable use. Let's make water a resource for all, not just for those who can afford it. So, what would a world without water look like? Imagine, if you will, a bleak landscape. No more rolling rivers, no more sparkling oceans. The absence of water, that essential elixir of life, would paint a desolate picture indeed. The very thought of it sends shivers down the spine. The most immediate and devastating impact would be the loss of life. Not just human life, mind you, but all life forms on this planet. Water is a fundamental building block of life. Without it, the survival of all creatures, great and small, would be at stake. Humans, animals, plants. Each one of us relies on water to survive and thrive. The human body alone is made up of nearly 2/3 water. It helps regulate our body temperature, aids digestion, and is essential for the functioning of our cells and organs. In a world devoid of water, life as we know it would cease to exist. The collapse of ecosystems would be another dire consequence. Wetlands, forests, grasslands, and deserts. Each of these ecosystems is intricately connected to water. The absence of water would disrupt the delicate balance of these ecosystems, leading to the extinction of countless species. Water is also crucial for agriculture. It nourishes the crops that feed us and the livestock that sustain us. Without water, our food supply would dwindle rapidly. Starvation would become a grim reality for millions, if not billions, of people. Then there's the potential for conflict. Throughout history, water has been a source of contention. The last war over water was fought in Mesopotamia more than 4,000 years ago. In a world without water, the struggle for this precious resource could spark conflicts on a scale we have never seen before. Water scarcity could also lead to mass displacement. As water sources dry up, people would be forced to abandon their homes in search of water. This could result in unprecedented migration, sparking social and political unrest. Finally, consider the economic consequences. Water is not just a resource, it's an economic asset. It's vital for industries, for energy production, for transportation. Without water, economies would crumble, and the world as we know it would change dramatically. Now, I don't mean to paint a picture of doom and gloom, but it's important to understand the gravity of the situation. Water is not just a commodity, it's a lifeline. It's the thread that connects all life on Earth. So, as we stand at this critical juncture, we must ask ourselves, what can we do to ensure that this precious resource is not depleted? How can we safeguard our water supply for future generations? A world without water is a world without life. Let's not let that become our reality. Now that we've painted this grim picture, it's time to talk about how we can prevent this from becoming our reality. So, what can we do to conserve water and ensure its equitable access? Let's start with the individual level. Small actions can have a big impact. We can do things like turning off the faucet while brushing our teeth, fixing leaks promptly, and using water-efficient appliances. These are simple steps, but if everyone did them, we could save billions of gallons of water every year. Now, let's move on to the community level. Communities can implement water-saving initiatives such as rainwater harvesting systems. These systems collect rainwater for use in landscaping, flushing toilets, and other non-drinking purposes. Additionally, communities can develop education programs to raise awareness about the importance of water conservation. Let's not forget about the role of governments. They can play a significant part in water conservation by establishing and enforcing water use regulations. They can also invest in infrastructure to improve water efficiency and accessibility. For instance, updating old leaky pipes can prevent water loss. Furthermore, governments can promote research and development of new technologies for water conservation and purification. But it's not just about conserving water, it's also about ensuring equitable access. Governments, non-profits, and businesses can work together to provide clean, safe water to those who currently lack access. This could involve building wells, setting up water purification systems, or providing water filters. Finally, let's talk about advocacy. We can all be advocates for water conservation and access. We can vote for politicians who prioritize these issues, support organizations working on water projects, and spread awareness in our own networks. Remember, every drop counts. Whether it's a drop saved by turning off the faucet or a drop provided to someone in need, each one is a step towards a future where everyone has access to the water they need. Let's not wait for a water apocalypse to start taking action. Let's do what we can now to ensure that water remains a right, not a luxury. Remember, every drop counts. We've taken a deep dive into the world of water, or rather, a world without water. Imagine a planet parched and desolate, a lifeless sphere spinning through space. That's the grim reality we've explored today. We've seen how the water we consume, the lifeblood of our existence, constitutes only 3% of our global water supply. The remaining 97% is saltwater, unfit for consumption or agriculture. We've understood the terrifying prospect of this precious 3% drying up and the consequences that would follow. We've journeyed back in time to over 4,000 years ago, to the plains of ancient Mesopotamia, where the last known water war was fought. We've contemplated the horrifying possibility of history repeating itself, of future wars being waged over the dwindling resource of fresh water. We've examined how water, a fundamental human right, is paradoxically transforming into a luxury resource, available only to those who can afford it. We've acknowledged the stark inequality that exists in water distribution and the urgent need for change. We've faced the potential consequences of a waterless world, the collapse of ecosystems, the extinction of countless species, and the threat to human survival. We've recognized the enormity of the crisis and the urgent need for action. But it's not all doom and gloom. We've also discussed possible solutions and the role each one of us can play in conserving water. From simple acts like turning off the tap while brushing, to larger initiatives like rainwater harvesting and wastewater recycling, we've seen how every drop saved can make a difference. As we've seen, water is life, so let's make every drop count. Each one of us has a role to play in ensuring that our precious water resources are managed efficiently and sustainably. It's a shared responsibility, and it's high time we stepped up to the plate. Thank you for watching, and don't forget to like and subscribe for more thought-provoking content.